Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are you? Welcome to Transformation Tuesday. I'm just going to wait for a few people to jump on. For those that are jumping on, hello, give us a shout out. Hope you're having a good week. For those that are watching the replay, we are diving deep into clarity. How do we get clarity? How do we overcome problems like, I'm not sure what I should do with my life, not sure what I should do with my business, not sure what decisions I should make, if I've got competing priorities, if I feel overwhelmed, if I feel like I've got too many projects, don't know what to focus on. So I'm going to help you with a lot of these challenges, a lot of these problems that come up for everyone, whether you're a business owner, whether you're working in a career. It doesn't matter where you are in life. We come up with challenges in life, which is where we're not sure what we should do. We lack clarity. And first of all, this is going to go super deep. This is going to go to the fabric of understanding who we are, what we are, and why we do what we do. So if you can relate to maybe needing an additional level of clarity in either your business or your life, then I'm going to give you the tools, the strategies, and the questions to unpack how to get greater clarity so you have a process to follow. So that way when you are missing clarity, you know, cool, follow this framework, follow these questions, and I will get clarity. So I'm going to endeavor to give you guys some frameworks, some questions, some power questions on how to overcome all those challenges and give you a system that you can use. Hey Paul, good to see you here, buddy. Good to see you. We're diving deep in clarity, guys. So let's dive in. So the first thing to recognize about clarity is if we're lacking clarity, and tell me if you guys have experienced this and drop some comments in below. If you can experience maybe having problems around making decisions, feeling torn between, oh, I want to do that, but I also want to do that, and I don't know which one to do. So feeling torn, feeling like we have competing priorities, feeling like if I do that, I'm going to miss out on that. Maybe not being able to make a decision quickly. Maybe we're needing to make a decision and we're just stewing on that decision over and over and over again. Now, if you can relate to that, then that is having a lack of clarity. And it's a lack of clarity is simply a conflict in or a lack of awareness about what we truly want, what's truly important to us at our core. So when we have that clarity, what it enables us to do is we can make decisions faster, we can make decisions with less mental energy, and ultimately make a decision that's more in alignment with our true self. And we're able to have discernment over what we truly want versus what is on the surface level pretending to be important or pretending to be something that we want, but we don't actually really want it. So it's going a level deeper and uncovering what do we actually truly want at our core. So I'm gonna drop in a few extra concepts here tonight, particularly around the ego and how our operating software that we're running as a human being kind of plays tricks on us, and sometimes it confuses us. So I'm going to unpack that to another degree. Hey Paul. Oh, here we go. Cool. Torn now between staying in Perth or moving to parents near Broome. Cool. Well, this is going to be a perfect example, a series of questions that you're going to be able to use to solve that dilemma for you. So I'm excited to share that with you. Good evening, Dora. Good to see you here. So let's dive into it, guys. Well, there's 5 major pillars to gaining clarity. And Paul, you'll be able to put this through, you'll be able to put this dilemma or this challenge you've got through this system that I'm going to give you tonight. And I'm keen to get your feedback as to how it helps you and what the impact is. It's all to do with your spiritual awakening. Good on you, Paul. I like the sound of that. Beautiful. So let's dive in. So there's 5 major pillars to clarity. Number 1 is knowing thyself. Now, what does that mean? Well, knowing thyself is understanding at our core, who are we? Truly, like, who are we at our core? Now, this is where it gets a little bit woo-woo, gets a little bit spiritual. I'm going to take a little bit spiritual because I believe at our core, what we are is we're spiritual beings having a human experience. So what we truly are at our core is infinite beings of love and light that are having a human experience. So what this means is that it means that we've chosen to have a human experience, and we're having a human experience which is giving this the experience of life, but ultimately at our core, we are infinite. We are this infinite, beautiful soul having this experience, and we're we're going through this incredible roller coaster of life. Now, in addition to obviously recognizing that at our core, we are a spiritual being, we also have human characteristics. We have human desires, we have human needs, we have human aspiration. And ultimately it's tuning into and becoming acutely aware of, well, who am I in terms of what am I here to experience? Who am I at my core in terms of who and what am I truly? And I think one of the most powerful questions we can ask is, well, at my core, what am I here to contribute? What am I here to give? What am I here to share? Because I think the highest level of fulfillment that we get in life comes from a recognition that when we contribute, when we give, like the secret to living is giving, as corny as it sounds, the secret to living is giving. So when we recognize and when we tune into, at our core, when we tune into, I'm here for something more, and it's generally a theme around contribution and giving, that's when most people experience the highest level of fulfillment, because they're tapping into something that goes beyond themselves. Not necessarily wanting to placate or necessarily to people please others, but a recognition of service is one of the highest forms of joy and fulfillment. Hey Paul, as I awaken more, it's too cold in Perth. I need warmth and more Mother Nature. Mate, Perth is warm compared to Tasmania. I've just come from Hobart and it's freezing there, mate. So where was I? Yeah. So I think really it's when we tap into knowing ourselves at our core. Hey Ross, hey Matt, good to see you guys. When we tap into who are we at our core, we start to connect at a deeper level. And that's what this is really about. It's truly connecting with who are we. And when we're truly connected, that's when we get access to greater insight. That's when we get access to infinite intelligence. When we're truly connected, when we have a connected state of being, we get access to more of what we actually are. To vibrationally, in terms of accessing a full range of who we truly are as a person, we now have greater access because we're now more connected. So truly being connected and spending time to get to know ourselves is the most important thing we can do. So to make this really practical and tangible, things like meditating, things like sitting in silence, things like just reflecting on us and our experience and our emotional world, that's one of the most powerful things that we can do because we get to know us at our core. Now, when we get to know us, we become empowered because we're truly connected with something that goes beyond the daily distractions of life, the daily just grinding out the 9 to 5 from Monday to Friday, just making it through the week. We become connected to something greater than ourselves, right? Something. When I say greater than ourselves, we become connected with the infinite around us, but we're also connected with us and who and what we truly are at our core. So that's the first thing, is knowing thyself. And I think one of the greatest journeys in this life we can have is understanding more of who are we truly at our core. That's the ultimate journey that we're all on. So we need to allocate blocks of time. We need to prioritize figuring out who and what we are and going on that journey to completely deconstruct, to understand, to analyze, and to figure out who the hell are we. And when we understand that, that's when we have true empowerment. Hey Katrina, good to see you here. Good to see you here, Matt. So that's number one, is know thyself. And Aristotle, he was a pretty smart dude. And he said that what did he say? He said that knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. And that's so true, because if you don't know yourself, if you don't know what you're truly here to do, then let's be honest, it's kind of like hopping in your car and just driving around the block without actually having a GPS destination. It's literally like we're just going through life, just kind of feeling our way around, not really having a clue what we're actually striving for. Whereas if we truly know who and what we are, we kind of know with rock solid clarity, with motivation, with drive, this is who I am and this is what I'm here to do. So this now relates back to purpose. This relates back to knowing that you're here for something, to do something, to be something, to make some sort of profound contribution. Not necessarily in a large quantity in terms of making a difference to millions of people's lives, but profound in something, doing something meaningful, doing something you actually care about, turning up and participating in life, giving a damn about why we're here, rather than just following. We actually get to become a leader. We actually get to become the CEO of our life, so to speak. We get to decide that we're the one driving our bus, not someone else. So it's standing in our authority and acknowledging and owning, I'm going to be the CEO of my life. And it starts with knowing, well, where am I going? Now, this then feeds into the second major pillar of clarity. which is choosing your destiny. Now, choosing your destiny is all about deciding, where do I want to go? What's my vision for my future? What's the ideal version of me? Who do I want to evolve into? And this really comes down to deciding and then designing our ultimate version of ourselves. So this is really about designing who do we want to become. I got your question there, Dora. How do you know when you truly know yourself? Well, that's the ultimate question, isn't it? It seems the more you learn, the more you realize there's so much more to learn. Yeah, that's so true, Dora. Thank you for the comment. Thanks, Paul. This is the thing, is yes, the more that we learn, the more that we realize that we don't know. And the more that we realize that there's so much more to learn. So that journey of knowing thyself, it's an infinite ongoing journey. This is the journey. So it's not like you get to a point and you're done. In terms of 100%, I now know every single facet of myself and then I'm done. The way that it works is you start getting more and more confidence when you put more and more time and effort and focus into these daily practices of getting clarity around self. And we get to a place where we get more and more confident, which means that we can then operate from a place of, when we're more confident about who and what we are, we can then make decisions that are now in alignment with that. And it becomes this self-fulfilling cascading effect where we're now more aligned, making more and more decisions in alignment with what we are, which means that we're now on the path, on the golden path. We're on the most direct route to that aligns with who and what we truly are. So that journey to know self, that's an ongoing journey. And that's one it's well worth the trip. And it's not like we ever get to a place when we're done. So it's ongoing, Dora. I trust that answers the question. So number 2 was really getting clear in our vision. Now, when I say vision, we've got to craft who do we want to become. So this is a vision for not only what do we want to achieve in our life or our business, but who do we want to be? So who do we want to evolve into? And I think the best way to describe this is there's our self of where we are now, which is here, and then there's our ideal self, which is over here. Now, there's always going to be a gap. There's always going to be a gap between our actual self and our ideal self. However, it starts with acknowledging the gap, because there's going to be a gap. We want to be over here. We want to have more compassion. We want to have more love. Maybe we want to have more money. Maybe we want to have more resilience. Maybe we want to have less distraction. So we've identified that there's all these features of ourselves that we want to improve, which is here, and this is where we are. So that inevitably there's always going to be a gap. Now, the key to life is recognizing and accepting and acknowledging that there's going to be a gap. But that gap is simply a skill gap. It's a gap in experience, a gap in knowledge. Now, the distinction here is to recognize that there's simply a gap in experience or knowledge. It shouldn't be a gap in self-worth. It shouldn't be a gap in us giving ourselves permission to truly love ourselves and to be kind to ourselves at our core. So what we can do is we can identify, great, there's a vision for myself, there's something greater, there's a more magical, amazing, beautiful version of me that I'm waiting to evolve into. And we don't have to have judgment of self. We don't have to have diminishment of where we're at now. We can accept where we're at, knowing that we're growing, knowing that we're expanding without diminishing ourselves. So that's the important thing here around defining what your vision is. Now, other questions around this are, what do you want for your future? Right? Things like, do you want to be, where do you want to live? How much money do you want to earn? It's really, and it's also defining what are the virtues and the values that you want to value in your life. So we have what's known as our idealistic values, and then we have our actual values, which are our core values, which is the third part, which is our core values of what we believe to be important in life. So what we believe to be important in life, that is essentially our core values. Now, most people are unaware of their values. Now, that's just a feature of life, is our core values. It's deep unconscious programming. That's what our values are. Our values are simply deep unconscious programming about what our priorities are. And our values are the way that we evaluate good and bad. It's the way we evaluate right from wrong. And it's the way that we make decisions based on our resources, our time, and our money. Hey, Paul, got your question. The gap you experience is what you have learned. The gap is you are experiencing what you have learned. You might have to tell me a little bit more about what you mean there, Paul. But the gap that we're experiencing right now in terms of where we are now and where we want to be, that's essentially that's the trajectory. That's the evolutionary path that we're walking. So it's acceptance of the gap. It's an acknowledgement that we're always expanding. There's always another level. And it's a journey that needs to have compassion and awareness and understanding that it doesn't necessarily mean that we need to diminish ourselves. We shouldn't diminish ourselves, but it's just a recognition that we are going to grow and expand. So coming back to core values, our core values are the third pillar, and we need to be aware of what our core values are. If we're not aware of our core values, then we have a massive big chunk of our clarity that's missing, because any dilemma, any clash or any conflict in our decision making at the core level is a values conflict, right? So say, for example, if you want to do that, but like say, for example, you might want to, and Paul might even relate this to your example, but for a lot of people, a common values clash is something like money and freedom. Like for a lot of people, they want to earn a lot of money, but they have a belief system or they have a core value, right, that says in order to earn that money, they can't now experience freedom. Right. So again, that's a values clash. There's two values pulling in two opposite directions. So people experience that as a discomfort, as a conflict. But at the deeper level, what it is, it's a values conflict, because we value one thing, but we also value another thing, and they're going in two different directions. So this is sort of unpacking the deeper unconscious causes of why we experience challenges around making decisions. Because ultimately, if we're having problems making a decision, at the core of it, at the deepest unconscious level, it means we're simply not clear on our priorities. Because when we have a crystal clear values compass, when we understand our values hierarchy, and I do this with the clients that I work with, is we work out all of your unconscious programming, which is your values hierarchy, which is simply an ordered list of all the things that are important to you in each of the contexts of your life. And when you become super clear of your values, you're able to now have a higher level of conscious awareness of your decision-making strategies, of your priorities, and how you want to evaluate, because again, the word value it's an evaluation filter. It's how we evaluate good, bad, right, and wrong, and it's how we decide on how to effectively manage all of our resources. So getting clear on our core values is super important, and the way that you do that is you would ask a question in life: what's important to you? Now, the answer that you're going to come back with is going to be things like maybe family, money, freedom, honesty, integrity, joy, those sorts of things. Now, you want to now look at your values hierarchy. This is called a hierarchy, which is now a list of all the things that are important to you. And when you have 100% clarity on what's important to you, we now know when we're going to make a decision if that decision aligns with the values or not. So it actually really makes decision making a lot simpler, because we now know, rightio, well, what's the most important thing in this? What's the most important thing in life? What's the most important thing in a relationship? So this now helps our decision making. So I trust that adds a level of clarity to you, Paul, in terms of in the context of this decision, you really want to ask, well, what's the most important thing about this for you? And then you'll have a list, you'll have an ordered list of your values, which you can then now evaluate your decision against some sort of criteria. Now, number 4 is we need to get clear on what are our goals. So once we've got our values defined, once we've defined our destiny, once we've defined or gotten clear on, well, who are we at our core, and that's as Dora pointed out, that's an ongoing journey. We've now got to start making this tangible, because all this process, going through this process is great, but the rubber's got to hit the road somewhere. We've got to make this tangible. This has now got to become, we've now got to implement and execute something. So this is where clarity turns into implementation, when we start to create clear written goals. So we now need to turn our values and our vision for ourselves into specific measurable goals. So this means for each of the different areas of our life, we can now start to set goals. So this is things like income goals, relationship goals, health goals, and even goals around our spare time and what we want to do with our spare time, with the hobbies and the things that we want to learn. So we can now set goals in and around those things. Same thing with business goals, right? Any business owner has got to be setting goals in and around each of the different dimensions of their business. So business owners have got to be setting goals around marketing. They've got to be setting goals around sales targets. They've got to set goals around social media, or setting goals around their team performance, things like that. So when we start to get black and white with the goal setting in our business, that's when we turn the intangible into the tangible. We start to create and manifest and actually start to, so to speak, put the where the rubber hits the road. We now start to create tangible results in a business because we now have strategies and plans that we're now going to that we're now going to follow. So that's a really powerful part of goal setting, is really getting specific, measurable, and time-bound targets that we can actually hit. Now, without that, all the stuff that we're talking about just remains in the ethereal, or just remains abstract. It just remains an idea. So when we take the idea and when we make it tangible and specific, that's when we get results. Now, number 5 is the next level of clarity is ultimately what are our internal and external obstacles. So what do I mean? Well, our internal and external obstacles are things within us. That would be internal, like our fears and our limiting beliefs. That would be our internal limitations. Then our external limitations would be things like resources. It would be things like people. It will be maybe challenges in your industry. Those sorts of things. So again, the first thing is to start with the internal first, because the internal is the thing that we have the most control over. Now, I'll just get you, Paul, get your question there, Paul. Yes, the most important is your spiritual awakening and grounding. Well, there you go. So knowing that that's important to you, Paul, you're now viewing the decision through the filter of having some evaluation criteria to make your decision. So when you get clear on your values, I think you'll find that decision starts to become a lot simpler for you. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be 100% simple. There might be some sacrifices that you have to make in terms of you can't satisfy every desire that you have, but you will be able to satisfy your core values and making sure that they're met. Dora, I got your question here. Can you shift your goalposts during the goal achieving process? Or is it best to stick to the original goals until achieved and then set new goals? That's a really good question. So Dora, the thing about goals is at the end of the day, it's not the goal that gives us the satisfaction. The goal is simply the target. The goal is simply what we're aspiring to create. So the goal, you would say, is the end destination. Now, we might set out on a journey. So I think a good metaphor for this is we're going out on a journey. We're going on a bushwalk and we've got a place on the map that we want to walk to, right? Apparently it's been recommended, it's based on our level of awareness. It's great. It's like, great, let's go to that destination. Now, halfway through the walk, we might spot on the horizon a beautiful waterfall or some other place that looks even more amazing that wasn't even on the map. Now, if that happens, right, we need to have the courage and the willingness to abandon our goal if something more aligned and something more congruent with who and what we are, which comes back to the first one, which is knowing thyself, is if we're pursuing a goal that's outside of ourselves, that's maybe based out of ego, that's not coming from a place of heart space, if it's coming from a place of maybe something artificial or surface level that doesn't resonate at our core, we need to be ready and willing to abandon that if it doesn't align with who and what we are. So it's not a matter of whether we stick to the goal or not. It's simply a recognition of, well, is this goal in alignment with who I am right now? Now, we're going to change, we're going to evolve, and that's a decision that we have to make in the moment. I can certainly relate to lots of examples in my life where I've abandoned goals simply because I get to a point and I recognize it's not authentically me anymore. So I think there's huge merit there in having courage to walk away from goals that aren't serving us, that don't align with us. When we expand our consciousness and our awareness to the degree where we now are aware, well, I previously wanted that goal, but now I don't. Celebrate that. And so I think there's huge merit there in having the courage to walk away from something when we recognize it doesn't serve us. Thanks, Paul. Just got your question there, Paul. Best way to stop any fears? Oh, I've got heaps of fear-busting suggestions for you, Paul. I think it's clear I need to move to Broome Broome, sacrifice is giving up my unit in Perth. Yeah, look, Paul, this is the thing. There's always sacrifice in life. There's no way around sacrifice. We live in a finite universe. There's limited time, energy, opportunities, and resources. We always have to make a decision to go one way or go the other way. We can either go left or we go right. We can't go both, right? Now, sometimes, yes, we can turn left and then we can go down that path and backtrack. But at the end of the day, we've got to make two choices. Yeah, thanks, Dora. So Paul, to answer your question, look, at the end of the day, you've got to make a decision. And life is going to give us the feedback that we need. So you'll make a decision, and it'll either be a decision that's in alignment with your highest truth, with your highest self, with your true self, or it'll be a decision that's out of alignment with yourself. So that's the way to think about it. Now, your environment and your experience, how you feel, is going to give you feedback as to how in alignment or out of alignment you are. So I think the more that we can trust us, again, the more that we know ourselves, the more that we can feel into knowing if we're in alignment with ourselves, with our true self, and then we can trust ourselves to take on the feedback of knowing, well, was that decision, was that in alignment with who I truly am, or was that decision out of alignment? So either way, you're going to learn from the decision. And I think a lot of people get caught up in, I've got to make the right decision. At the end of the day, we've got to make the decision that aligns with us and that appeals to us based on our level of awareness and our knowledge at the time, knowing, look, we may turn out to be the wrong decision. It may turn out to be not the decision that's in the best interest, but we have to do something. So we're better off making a decision and getting it wrong and learning from it than making no decision. Because there's so many people that go through life waiting, wishing and hoping for life to change, but they're afraid of getting it wrong, so they make no decision. And all of a sudden, 10, 20, 30, 40 years, the whole life goes past, and they've done nothing. So we're better off making a decision, not having all the data, and just backing ourselves and going with it, willing and having the courage to be proven wrong, willing to get it wrong, knowing that we're going to learn from it, and then we can course correct. So life is going to give us action signals. Life is going to give us and reflect to us all the data that we could ever need to know, because when we make a decision, if it's out of alignment with self, we're going to get feedback on that. So either way, we're going to make a decision quickly, learn from it, expand, evolve, and then make the next decision. That's what creating a successful life is all about. Hey Francis, I've just got your question here. I see goals as things we create to be helpful in our journey towards a higher purpose. When they're no longer helpful, it's time for a different goal. I love that. I think that's a beautiful philosophy. I totally agree with that, because the goal is simply a goalpost, right? The goal is simply the destination. The journey that we go on is what it's really about, because the goal creates the challenge. When we set a goal, the challenge appears. And when we overcome that challenge, that's when we truly get tested. That's when we truly find out what we're made of. And look, at the end of the day, the destination for all of us is death, right? At the end of the day, our life is going to finish. There's an end point for when this life finishes. So realistically, looking at that perspective, we know, well, really, it's got to be about the journey, doesn't it? Because at the end of the day, it's simply a finite moment in time when we get to that goal. And once we get to that goal, it's like it's done. So ultimately, it really must be about the journey. It must be about the experience. It's about the expansion. It's about the process that we go through to get to that. So I see the goal as an important part. Equally so, it's the journey and the process and the experience that unfolds on the way to that goal. So it's less attachment to the goal and more of an appreciation for the journey that's unfolding as we go. Hey Chris, good evening. When we set big goals that push us to grow, how do you tell what is out of your comfort zone and what is out of alignment? Very good question. So I would say we know when we're out of alignment, right? When and again, there's a couple of distinctions that's required to know when we're out of alignment. In order to know that we're out of alignment, we need to truly know self. So again, it comes back to the first point, which is knowing thyself. Now, there are a couple of features of knowing thyself. One of the first things of knowing thyself is a distinction of knowing the difference between when we're experiencing our higher self or our true self or our heart space. That's one distinction. And then knowing when we're experiencing the ego. Now, the ego is the program that's been loaded onto this software system that we experience, loaded onto our hardware, which is human. And our ego is there to protect us. It's to keep us playing a small game. Now, the ego operates out of judgment, out of fear, and out of limitation. So I would say that probably the best way of answering your question would be, we're out of alignment when we are coming from a place of ego. When we let our ego drive our decisions, when we let our ego, which is fear-based, limitation-based, that's when we're out of alignment. Out of our comfort zone, right? We can be out of our comfort zone, but still coming from a place of spirit, right? Now, in the sense that we can be pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone, knowing that it's new and it's expanding ourselves, but you can still be pushing beyond your comfort zone and kind of feeling a sense of like nervousness and excitement, kind of knowing that, geez, I'm going for it here, but it totally aligns with what I want. So it's a tricky one there in terms of to create clarity around that. And it can be a very, very subtle fine line between comfort zone versus out of alignment. And this is really what needs to be created through intuition. This is what, when we build up the program of intuition, of reference points in our life around when we trust ourselves, when we trust our spirit, when we trust our heart space, we come from a place of knowing, yes, I'm trusting myself right now. It aligns with what I want. I know it's probably not necessarily going to feel comfortable, right? Because there's a difference between alignment and comfortable, right? So yes, it may not feel comfortable. However, we know it's in alignment with what we truly want, and we then make the decision to have courage to follow through. So I'd say that's probably maybe one of the virtues that we draw upon when we recognize we're out of a comfort zone, is we may just require courage to follow through and to have some resilience and mental toughness there to kind of follow through on something that might be unfamiliar. Yeah, awesome. So that they're the 5 pillars, guys. We've got know thyself. We've got 2 is choose your destiny. 3 is understand your core values. Number 4 is get clear on what are your goals. And number 5 is know your internal and external obstacles. Now, I'm just going to touch on the last bit there, which is your internal obstacles. The major ones are fears and limiting beliefs. So fears and limiting beliefs are the two biggest internal limitations that we're ever going to have. Now again, all of our beliefs are just simply possibility filters. All of our beliefs are just simply thoughts that we've thought so many times that it's become our reality. That's what a belief is. That's what everything that we believe life to be is simply our own construction. It's our own programming, it's our conditioning, it's all the thoughts that we've had through the whole entire journey of our life that's led us to this level of consciousness right now. So our beliefs are either helping us or they're hindering us. And again, we need to have very deep introspection into the nature of our beliefs and if they're supporting us and if they're creating our expansion, or whether they're limiting us and whether they're making us, stopping us and preventing us from playing the game that we're truly here to experience. Thanks, Paul. Good. Thanks for the comment, mate. So it's really an awareness that we need to create around what are our limiting beliefs and what are our fears, because all this stuff is just made up. It's all programming. Because for every fear that we have, we know that there's someone else in the world that doesn't have that fear. So again, from that point of view, we can know, well, what do I need to believe about my reality for such that I have this fear that gets created? So I'll give you a quick example here of how to identify limiting beliefs. So any negative experience that you have, say for example, if you're afraid of public speaking, or if you're afraid of saying something or doing a Facebook Live and someone judging you, right? That would be a negative emotional trigger. Now what sits beneath that, right, is going to be a limiting belief. For example, anyone who's afraid of public speaking, they probably have limiting beliefs like, if I screw it up, I'm going to be judged and I'm going to suffer. If I don't present properly on stage, or if I muck it up, then my career is going to suffer, or I'm going to get rejected by all my friends, or I'm not going to have any friends, or I'm going to be lonely, or I'm not going to feel self-worth. So beneath that, there's some very deeply ingrained and usually unconscious limiting beliefs that are driving that negative emotional experience. So that's what's actually going on. Same thing when people say they experience stress. Oh, I'm really stressed out. Well, stress is the achiever's word for fear. Stress is the achiever's word for fear. What are you stressed about? Stressed is I'm afraid of something happening. I'm afraid of if this happens, it will mean this about me, or I'm afraid this will happen, right? So again, it's a fear. Stress is it's a fear-based activity that's driven by a series of limiting beliefs about what something in the external environment will mean about us. mean it about our self-worth, our worthiness, our ability to care about ourselves, that sort of thing. So that's what's actually going under the iceberg. Hey Paul, big fear of mine is doing live spiritual readings and being judged. Yeah, there you go. So I mean, good on you for acknowledging that. That's the first step, is actually acknowledging the limitation. So step one is acknowledgement, which is basically awareness. The middle step is understanding how that's playing out, understanding the programming. The third step is then moving beyond that. So you're already at the first level, which is awareness. The next level is to understand how that's playing out. And typically, when we're worried about being judged, what we're actually doing is we're actually outsourcing outsourcing our sense of self-worth to the opinion of someone else. So it's actually represent, and this is kind of going deep, but if we're worried about how someone else is going to judge us, at its core, it's a gap in our sense of self-worth. Because if our self-worth was 100%, then we wouldn't outsource the opinion of ourselves to anyone. We wouldn't believe anyone. We'd say, well, look, you're entitled to your opinion. I'm not going to take on your opinion about my self-worth. So fear of being judged, at its core, is a gap in our self-worth. That's what it is. Because to think about it, if we 100% self-love, self-worth, it's all good. Yeah, you can have all the opinions that you want. You can have the opinions that you want. I don't care. I don't believe you. So if we're taking on the judgment of someone else, it means we are believing their opinion and we're letting it get through our armor. Now, in order to develop that armor, we need to develop rock solid self-worth, self-love by ongoing practices. Thanks, Chris. Ongoing daily practices around reiterating and reaffirming our self-worth so we become robust. So this is the thing, and thanks for sharing that, Paul, because this is a great example, because I think a lot of people can relate to outsourcing the opinion of, again, this is self-esteem, self-worth, self-love. It's all kind of in the same family. But if we're reliant on someone else's opinion of us for us to feel good, we're completely outsourcing, right? And relying on external validation to then make us give ourselves permission to feel self-worth. That's fucked. So it's a pattern of externalizing our validation, right? Which is just simply a pattern of human behavior, a pattern of thinking that's been happening over the course of our life. Now, obviously, the third step of that, after understanding it, is to then move beyond it. In order to move beyond that, we now need to start recognizing when we're doing that thought pattern, because all it is a thought pattern. It's like, oh, I'm now placing the opinion of someone else. I'm now waiting for them to give me validation. I'm now relying on that external source of validation for me to feel good about myself. It's kind of fucked up. Catch ourselves out when we're doing it, overriding it by taking new action, doing it over and over and over again. So that way we desensitize ourselves to that experience. And ultimately, it's now taking new action, recognizing where the pattern's playing out, and that's how we override it. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it, buddy. So I trust that adds a bit of value there around how to overcome judgment of others, because all it is this outsourcing, it's external validation of our sense of self-worth, which is a common pattern that most people experience in life. And the only way that we do that is literally to get out there, recognize that there's going to be naysayers, there's going to be people that are going to sling shit at us, people are going to have an opinion, and it's recognizing that that's all it is. It's simply just an opinion. Now, someone can have an opinion, but unless that person is you, unless that person's known you for your entire life, that opinion can in no way be as accurate as it needs to be to inform you of your own self-worth. And I would actually insist that we have a rule, that we have a belief, that we have a philosophy, that we choose to love ourselves and we choose to value ourselves and have ultimate self-worth regardless of what's happening in our external environment. Regardless of what anyone else says, we choose to love ourselves, we choose to have self-worth regardless. And again, yes, it's a skill. Yes, it's not necessarily easy when there's naysayers and people with opinion and people slinging shit at us. That's the challenge. That's the challenge, to develop the highest level of self-worth, to develop a very resilient level of self-care, self-esteem, and be our own booster, to be our own best friend and our own champion in those times when we do get tested, and to recognize there's going to be opinions, there's going to be stuff that other people say, and it means nothing about us because they have no idea who and what we are. Going back to the first aspect, we are the only ones that know who and what we are, and any externalization of our self-worth to the opinion of others is complete and utter sabotage. It's complete self-sabotage and a disrespect to ourselves and what we truly are at our core. So This is the challenge, is we are going to get naysayers. We are going to get people that sling shit, and we just accept it. We bless them with love and we move beyond it. We don't buy into it. We're not buying into this external world. We don't buy into these external comments and opinions of others, and we recognize that it's simply that. It's just simply someone's opinion. So that's when we have true empowerment and true enlightenment to a degree, when we can separate and have a pause in our consciousness between when someone has an opinion and then the processing time in which we actually process the words, that vibrational frequency, we process whatever that is, and then we can actually go, well, I'm going to assess the validity of the accuracy of the information, that it has in no way, shape or form mean anything about my self-worth. So if someone might give us feedback in our environment, we can evaluate it. Right? For example, if I'm wanting to be a professional football player and I'm, go to kick a goal and I kick it out on the full, right? And now someone in the crowd yells something at me, yeah, you can't kick, right? I'll go, well, what's the accuracy of that information, right? Now, yes, it might mean that I'm not a good footballer in terms of skill set. The difference then is making it mean something about me at the identity level, at the self-worth level. So yes, we can get information from our environment, which is simply about facts, data, skill set, observation. The next level is separating that from our sense of self-worth, from our worthiness, and from our choice to love ourselves. So that's the distinction. And when we're able to elevate our consciousness through understanding these distinctions, we're able to then intercept the default negative thinking, the default negative reaction that a lot of us fall into by worrying about the judgment of others. But that's a journey, and that's a journey to be had. And it's in order to evolve to that level, it's constant work. It's daily work. It's daily practices, daily rituals around self-worth, self-love, and recognizing that the opinions of others are just simply that. They're just opinions, and then we can move beyond them. Anyway, guys, they were my 5 pillars to clarity. I'm going to put up a summary sheet for those of you that watch this event. I'm going to put up a summary sheet that's going to have some of this on a data sheet, on a cheat sheet, so to speak, so you guys can reflect on it. For those that are watching the replay, check that link out, because it's going to be an absolute game changer for you to enhance your level of clarity, your level of your decision-making ability, and your ability to discern between what's in alignment and what's not in alignment. So thank you guys so much for your questions. Really appreciate you guys. Thanks, Francis. Thanks, Paul. Hey, Maddie, Chris. Thank you guys for your comments. Thanks, Dora. Good to see you there, Karen. Yeah, thank you guys all for joining in. Thank you so much. I'm also going to be running a webinar coming up on Thursday week for those that are interested in learning more about what I teach, understanding more about my coaching style. How do we sort of turn these principles, this way of thinking, into a methodology in terms of a framework that you can apply to your business, to your relationship, to your life. So for those that are interested, I'll pop the link up there. It's a free webinar. It's a free 1-hour training that's very similar to this, that goes a whole level deeper. A lot of principles from neuro-linguistic programming, also known as NLP, will be thrown in there as well. So if you guys are interested in really taking this to the next level, I invite you guys to jump on that free training where I get to share another rabbit hole that goes a whole level deeper than this. So I trust you guys are having a great week, and I'm just checking out the last couple of comments there. Hey Chris, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you got value, Chris. It's always a pleasure to share the gold with you guys and share the best of the best of how to expand beyond all of our limitations and our fears and evolve into the ultimate version of ourselves. So, as always, lots of love, guys. Wishing you a fantastic week. Thanks again, and I'll see you again next Tuesday for the next Transformation Tuesday. Signing out.